Welcome to the Harper Classroom series of instructional videos. I'm Dr. Harper. This video is on worked problems with Excel, forecasting, part 1. The agenda for this video is I will work these 6 problems in Excel. But be aware that the definitions and concepts are covered in other videos and not this one. This video is only worked problems. So now let's bring in Excel and start with moving average. I've typed in a time series and a heading, and let's do a moving average with a window of 2, 3, and 4. So for a window of 2, we're going to average the first 2, and that'll be the forecast for time period 3. So the function is average. We highlight, left click, and drag to get the 2. Return, and then highlight that in the lower right and copy all the way down to time period 10, or index number 10. And there's my forecast. 416, and that's for a window of 2. For a window of 3, then I'll come down and average 3 at a time. So 1, 2, and 3 then would be the forecast for time period 4. And then I copy that down all the way to 10. And then moving average of the window of 4 will be the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then every contiguous 4 is all the way down, and then there's our forecast. Now if we want to see what this looks like, we can highlight the time series, and then let me open the magnification. And so this magnification will follow my cursor so you can see what I'm clicking. Up here I'm going to click Insert. Then come over here and click Recommended Charts. And then as I come down here, I'm going to pick this chart, and then say OK. And there's what my time series looks like. Now, if I want to see what my moving average looks like on here, in addition to my time series, then I come up to my Design and click Design. Then I come over to Select Data, and then I add. And my series name here is going to be MA2, moving average with a window of 2. I'll come down to my X values. Well, since MA2 here starts right here at time period 3, my X values are going to start at 3 and go all the way to 10. Then I come up here to my Y values. My Y values start at 3 and go all the way to 10, but those are my moving average. And time period 10 then represents my forecast. I can also add moving average of the window of 3. So MA3, then the X values are going to be 4 through 10, and then the Y values are going to be those. And then I'll do add MA4. X values are going to be 5 through 10, and then the Y values are going to be those. Okay. Okay. And there they are. But now we have all the time series here and the moving averages. And so let's come over here to the Design again, and then come over to Add Chart Elements. And we're going to come down and add the legend, and we can come down, we can have the right, we can have top, left. Let's just do the right. And now we can see that the time series is in blue, the MA2 is in orange, the MA3 is in gray, MA4 then is in gold. So that's how we do forecast with moving average. So now let's do regression. For regression, I've typed in another time series. And so if we want to see what this time series looks like, again, we can go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and I'll pick this one down here. And there's what our time series looks like. So now let's forecast. But with forecasting, we need the intercept and slope. And just we'll use the intercept function. and it asks for known y's, the known x's. Known y's are these, comma, the known x's are 1 through 9. And then we have the slope. And we'll use the slope function. And here we have our known y's again, comma, our known x's. So there's our intercept and slope. Let's move this over. And now let's calculate our forecast. Well, that's going to equal our intercept plus our slope times our index. And that's going to be the forecast for that first time period. But we're going to use the intercept and slope for every time period. So I come up here, and so the E4, I highlight it, and then F4 to freeze it. E5, I highlight E and 5, and then I press F4 to freeze it. Return. And now I can copy that down all the way to time period 10, and there's my forecast, 1047. And so that equals my forecast, which is the intercept, plus my slope times my index. And so there's my forecast. Now if I want to see what my forecast actually looks like here, I can click on the graph, come up here to Design, come over to Select Data, and then I can add. This time my x value is going to be 10, and then my y value is just going to be the 1047, and I say OK and OK, and there's my forecast. Now we know our trend line has an intercept of 77 and a slope of 97, but we can see what that looks like. Let me bring in the magnifier again. I can come down to the line, right click, and when I right click, it opens this menu. I can come down to Add Trend Line. I click that, left click, and I can come over here and I can have an exponential fit to the data, a linear fit to the data, and notice that's what I have. And so this dotted line there is the least squares fit with an intercept of 77 and a slope of 97. So that's how you solve regression with Excel. So now let's go to seasonal indexes. So I've typed in our quarterly data, 3 years worth of quarterly data. And since we're assuming it's a stationary time series with a random and seasonal components, then we'll take the average here. Average of each quarter. And then we copy that average over, and we know that those are our forecasts. And then over here, if we take the average of the forecasts, we know that's the seasonally adjusted forecast. So let me put these labels in. So these are our seasonal forecasts, and this is the seasonally adjusted forecast for every quarter of next year. Now, if I take my seasonal value, and then we divide by the seasonally adjusted value, that's going to give us our seasonal index. And so I want to divide everything by the same seasonally adjusted value, so I highlight F7, F4 to freeze it, and then I copy that over for the 4 quarters, and there's my seasonal indexes. Well, let me label those. And there's my seasonal indexes. Now, if I want to see what this looks like, then I can highlight the quarters and the years and the forecasts, and then go to Insert, Recommended Charts. I come down, I'll pick the line chart here. And so now we can see that year 1 is the blue, the one at the top up here. Year 2 is the orange at the bottom. Year 3 is the green. And then the forecast here turns out to be the gold in the middle. But also, if I wanted to see my seasonally adjusted forecast and my stationary mean, then I could come down here and call this my stationary mean, and that's going to be my 560, and then I'll just copy that over. So then I can go to my data, go to design, go to select data, and then I can add. And I want to add my series name, which is mean, and the actual values that I'm going to plot are going to be my seasonally adjusted values, and that's going to just be simply a straight line. Now we can see not only what our seasonal values look like, but now we see our seasonally adjusted values, and that's our stationary mean. And that's how you solve seasonal indexes with Excel. So now let's go to exponential smoothing. And with exponential smoothing, I typed in a time series, and we will assume it's a stationary time series with a random component. And let's let alpha equal 0.26. Then I can copy that down for every time period. Now let's calculate the forecasts. And so the forecast for time period 2 will be the data for time period 1. That's how we start. And then the forecast here is going to equal the alpha times the data plus 1 minus alpha times the forecast. And then we copy that down all the way to time period 10, and there's our forecast 429. Now if we want to see what our time series and forecast looks like, then we highlight it, we go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and come down to the line chart, and there it is. And we can see that our time series is in blue, and then our exponential smoothing forecast with an alpha smoothing constant of 0.26 is on orange, and that's how you do exponential smoothing in Excel. So now let's do forecast accuracy. To see forecast accuracy, I have another time series here, and notice I start with a forecast from regression. Well, if we're going to use regression, we're going to have an intercept and slope. So let's start with the intercept function with the y's, comma, the x's, and then I go to the slope function, where I have the y's, comma, the x's. So now the actual forecast is going to equal the intercept plus the slope times the index. And so there's my forecast. But I want the intercept, which is C15, to be the same for all my time periods, so I highlight it, F4 to freeze it. And also my slope is the same, so I go C16, highlight it, F4 to freeze it. And then I copy that down. I copy that down all the way to time period 10 because that is my forecast. So if I want to see what this looks like, I can highlight my time series and regression all the way down. I go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and then I come down to the line chart, and there it is. OK. And now we can see the blue is our time series, the orange is our regression, which is our fit here. And now we can do the mean deviation, MAD, and tracking signal. Well, we can see the line fits through that pretty well, so it should be pretty accurate. So let's see what it looks like. Well, first of all, for the deviations, let's take the time series, demand data, minus our forecast, and copy that down. Well, go ahead and do all of them, but you notice we have a window of 4, so we'll only look at the last 4. Those are the only 4 we're looking at, so let me highlight that in a box. And then the mean absolute deviation will be the absolute value of the deviation, return, and then I copy all of that down. And then down here we take the average, but we take the average of only the last 4, these last 4. because our window is 4. And then we copy that over. And then we highlight just these last 4. And now our tracking signal. Well, the tracking signal is going to equal, since our window is 4, we take 4 times our mean deviation divided by our MAD. And so there's going to be our tracking signal, minus 0.56, which is pretty good. So these last 4 values, which is 6, 7, 8, and 9, these 6, 7, 8, and 9, they fit it pretty well. So there's very little bias. Let's try another forecast. Let's do MA2. Well, MA2 is for a stationary time series, and this time series is not stationary. But then let's see what happens when we do that. So I'll take the average of the 2 previous values, and then I'll copy that down all the way. And now when you do, you can see that since I'm averaging these 2 values, it's going to lag behind my trend line. And so now notice my tracking signal jumps up to the maximum, which is 4. And that's how you do forecast accuracy measures in Excel. So now let's do a session. And what I mean by a session is using a set of data and starting from the beginning. So the first thing we do is plot it. So I highlight the time series here, insert, recommended charts, and I come down and have a line chart. And when I plot this, now I can see that I do have a non-stationary time series with a trend component. Well, it's quarterly data, so let's see if I have a seasonal component. Well, the best way to do that is block it with years 1, 2, 3, and then with quarters, quarter 1. Now I want to copy this instead of a column. I'm going to copy it into rows. And so what I will do, and let me go to the magnifier, and the magnifier will follow my cursor. And so notice I highlight. First of all, I highlight and I copy. Now I want to copy it right here, quarter 1, year 1. But then I come over under paste, I do the down arrow, then I come down to paste special. Then over here I have values. And then I come down here to transpose. Transpose a column to a row. Then I say OK. Then I take the next 4 values, I just move them down. Then I take the next 4 values and I move them down. So now I want to plot these. So now let me plot my quarters here. Quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Insert, recommended charts, and there they are. And now I can see my trend from series 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, and I can see that it's increasing. So I do have a trend, and I do have seasonality, because the pattern repeats every year. So from my graphs, I know I have seasonality, I know I have a trend, so here I'm going to take my slope equals slope of the dependent variable regressed onto the independent variable. And now we do want the independent variable to be the x value to be constant over all quarters. So let's do the magnifier again. And so we come over here and we highlight the x values, F4, to freeze them. See, they're frozen. And then we copy that over. And there's our slopes. Now, we also need the intercept. And from statistics, we know that the intercept is equal to the average of the dependent variables minus the average of the independent variables times the slope. And again, we want these independent variables over here, the C3 through C5, the x's, to be constant over all quarters, and so we F4 to freeze them. Return, and then we copy that over. And now our forecast for year 4 is simply going to be the intercept plus the slope times 4, which is our year 4. And then we copy that over. And we could do the same thing for year 5, which is equal to the intercept plus the slope times 5, and copy that over. And we could just keep doing that. Now up here on the slope, since the slope has all of the seasonality, I can take the average of the slopes, and that's the seasonally adjusted slope. And then down here for the seasonal indexes, I can take the seasonal value and divide by the seasonally adjusted value. And there's my index. Again, I want to divide all of my seasonal values by the same seasonally adjusted value. And so I come up here and I freeze H6 with an F4. And now return, and now I can copy that over. And that's how you do a session in Excel. Again, let me remind you to be aware that the definitions and concepts are covered in other videos, not this video. This was just working problems. So that ends the video on Worked Problems with Excel Forecasting Part 1. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.